Okay.
So yeah, we're in 4722. It's only been, I think, a couple months since the group started, even though it's been quite a bit of time since we started playing. But that is where we got to, and now for a little information about what happened in the last uh, prior to you joining us. So now I have to go back and find
God, sorry,
Zombie
my nose is
Feast.
so itchy all of a sudden. I keep.
What has happened? Um, the group at the beginning were hired by uh, the Bloodlord named Berlin Haldoli. Bloodlords are basically the council of however many Geb feels like having. I think there's like 20 or 30 of them. She's basically overseeing an area. She's above the governor, but is only overseeing about the same amount of area as the governor does. So I'm not sure why they need a governor when they've got her, but she also oversees a lot of the the food that comes out of this area. Geb itself is a very is one of the biggest producers of food on Galarian. They export loads of food because they've got undead that they can use for 24-hour labor. So they don't need to pay anyone, so they can sell it for cheaper than everybody else.
Mm.
So
And of
Berlin,
course, we're free to explore the ethical conundrum of is slave labor okay if the slaves are all mindless undead zombies, or do zombies
yeah,
have rights?
I mean slave labor with robots, kind of. It's
Mm.
pretty similar when it's mindless undead. A note would be that Geb in Geb, the intelligent undead are the upper class. Even the lowest class intelligent undead is seen as more important than any living person, unless that living person,
The
like
quick,
Berlin, is a bloodlord.
right?
So Berlin's always on the lookout for up and comers. So she found our group, which at that time was a priestess, then Ramsey, the chef, Goblin Ramsey, and then Not a Dog, a private investigator. She needed some help from them because one of her farms stopped sending food out. No, couldn't get a hold of anyone, just stopped sending food out, stopped sending any communication. So she sent them in to take a look, and what they found was that everybody was dead. The undead were just roaming around because their handlers had been killed, so they didn't have anyone preventing them from just running amok and eating whatever they wanted. In their investigation, they found that some people from a group which had a symbol of a three-fingered hand. I believe it's missing the ring finger. These people had tried to poison the grain, but gotten caught and then they fought each other, and as soon as one of the handlers went down, then their zombies started attacking everyone, and then the next handler, and so everybody died. Um, they found one was a pinkish powder and one was a gray paste. From there, they they went back to Berlin, gave her their findings. She started looking into these two substances that they found and gave them their reward, which was the deed to a manor. But they were told that, I mean, there's stuff in there, so you're gonna have to fight your way to actually owning it. There was
A few squatters you need to
a
deal
few
with.
squatters. There were some demon bugs that infested some skeletons in the basement. There were a bunch of giant rats and a rat swarm. There was also what are they? A tomb. What is she? Graveyard. She is a tombstone troll. Um, so in the book, it says that she only fights if attacked, and the characters can talk to her and make friends, and if they want, they can even help her find a mate, because that's all she's looking for, is to find a mate and create a burrow to raise her family. But
A tombstone troll, did you say?
yes, so tombstone trolls are trolls that have been infected with an undead virus, so ghoul or zombie or whatever, but because of their healing from being a troll, they aren't undead, but they're also not alive. They're constantly rotting and then healing and rotting and healing.
The liminal state.
Yeah, they look pretty nasty. But yeah, so
I had to laugh because in another game I had been in a while back, the party face a tombstone golem, so it was like a golem made of tombstones,
yeah,
and 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 when each character encountered it and like caught sight of it, the first thing that happened was they saw their name
on a
written on one of the
tombstone.
tombstones. But the thing was, my character, I was like, when the DM was like, and your character sees their name, and I was like, wait a minute, their whole name, because the backstory of this character was that they were part of a family, notorious family, but they didn't know it. They
Yeah.
had no idea of their background. So I was like, does my character see their whole name? And the DM was like, yes. And I'm like, well, now you're gonna have to find some resolution to that, because so anyway, but yeah, tombstone golem, quite different from a tombstone troll, but
Quite
still
different, yes.
fascinating. A really interesting, yeah, kind of creature to encounter.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so the characters did have this chance, but as soon as they saw that there were holes, they were like, "Oh, is this like just a giant gopher?" And they went and checked, and because
Okay.
they went in with a torch, so fire bad with trolls. So she was
Um.
scared and attacked, and so they just killed her.
Oh no.
She could have been just like not a pet, but tombstone trolls aren't exactly intelligent.
Right.
They're intelligent but not intelligent.
Like she would have been like the fox at the end of the garden, that
Yeah, exactly.
not a pet, but we kind of we're friends with
Exactly. She could have been that,
Oh,
but they just killed her.
alas.
Alas. And then at the end, they found a secret passage leading to a secret room that had, oh man, what are they? It is a skull fairy,
Ooh,
which almost killed one of them, but they rolled high enough on their save that it didn't. Um, it's got it has a thing that if it manages to hit a creature and use this action, uh, and the person fails their save, they die, and it just rips their head off. And that's at
and then
level
keeps the
one.
skull. Oh my
That's
goodness.
a level. It's a level 3 creature, but it's
Oh,
they
yeah.
were doing this at level 1.
Oh my goodness.
But they did manage to kill it and found a few things. They found a strange key that the end looked like a tongue, like a forked devil's tongue. Um, and
Kinky.
a few other things that they weren't sure what to do with. And then they went on. They got a. Um, they were
Presumably
invited.
these were meta-wise.
Yeah,
These some of these items would be like crucial to the plot
crucial
later
to the
on,
plot.
kind
Yeah,
of thing. So
one of them was
well,
a very clear hint for one of the later dungeons. I did have to do a little. You've got something on your inventory that you might want to look at before you do this. Um,
sometimes a GM has to kind of hold the
Sometimes,
players.
yeah.
You know,
Especially
we'd be dumb. We're dummies.
yeah, and there had been a few weeks where we had to postpone because of Christmas and stuff like that. So I was like, hey, just so you know, you do have this.
You may have forgotten.
They got a dinner with a priest, Ortigar Stitch Skull, who is a human who's just covered in stitches on his head. I, it doesn't give any reason why he's just stitched up. I think it might be because of his god, Zon Cathon, which is a god of torture.
Oh,
So
okay.
it was probably self inflicted wounds that just got stitched up. Um, but
And
they
they haven't. Geb hasn't invented those dissolving stitches yet,
no,
so they just stay.
they just stay. So they were told about the Bone Shard Gang, and oh, actually, this happened later because they decided to go to the level the more difficult area before going to the easy area. So
Womp womp. No.
they were like, "Oh, it's on the way, so we're just gonna go to the bank before we go to this dinner with the priest." The bank is where they learned about this, but it's also where they encountered their first trap, two traps, because they weren't looking for traps.
Always check the traps.
Always check for
Get it
traps.
tattooed on the back of your hand.
Yeah. So they sneak past these giant jumbles of bones that were left over from a celebration, but were reanimated. So just finger bones, not even a hand, just finger bones kind of
Oh,
walking around. And they step on one of the traps, which summons a cockatrice.
everyone's favorite.
Everyone's favorite. No one got petrified, but I think one of them almost did. Yeah. Hey Mitch, the NPC companion, almost got
Uh,
petrified. Um, they continued on and got hit by the sickle blade trap on one of the doors because, again, they didn't check. So they just opened the door and whoomp, and almost killed one of them first hit.
Oh my god.
But they learned a few things and continued on. Almost died to yet another trap. This is something that is not in 5e, but they are called haunts. They are a type of trap that has a way to disable that isn't just you go up to it and you mechanically disable it. I think, yeah, Ramsey was able to disable it because of the it was a religious headdress that was causing it, and it was his religion as well. He worships Urgathoa, one of the gods of the dead, and this woman was wearing a headdress of Urgathoa, and it was her murder that caused it to happen. So
It being the trap?
the trap, yeah, caused the trap to come into being because it was a haunt.
Manifest, yeah. Okay, I see, I see.
So they were able to disable it by doing, I think he said a prayer to Urgathoa, which temporarily puts it to rest, and gave them 1 hour to do whatever they needed to in the room. So that is a thing to keep in mind. I know we're not talking about the how-to yet, but that is a thing to keep in mind, is that sometimes things are happening and it's a haunt, and there's other ways around it. Yeah. They did come across another haunt later on that I had to deal with as a with Hey Mitch, because
Oh dear.
they weren't, and it almost killed one of them on the first round.
Okay.
This bank is also where they found the creatures that are soon to be protecting the manor, called Eenie and Meanie, a pair of what are they specifically called? Guardian beasts. So they are demons bound in the statue of in statues of vultures. So the vultures can animate and attack whatever's hurting them. They like the taste of fresh meat, but they obviously can't eat because they're a statue.
So they just chew on it.
They just chew on it. So they destroyed both of the vultures, but the statue base is where the actual demon resides, and they were able to talk to one of the statues, and it was like, okay, well, if you promise to get us out of here, you promise to give us meat regularly, yeah, we'll protect your home. They just have to find a
So
way
it's
to
Eeny and Meeny, but now we're missing Miney and Mo.
exactly. So they have to find a way to get them out of the bank. It's a closed bank, but it's going to be reopening soon. So they need to find a way to get it out of there before the new owners open up.
Right. Okay.
Um,
So is this a side quest that is still active in the game? Or
it's a background quest. It's going on with the with Sasha's character. Sasha unfortunately had to leave due to life stuff going on. So
sure.
her character is still around, and if she's able to come back, she's able to come back, and her character will be there for her.
That's really cool.
So they eventually find the vault that I had to give them the hints on, which finds them the contract that they're able to use to at the end of the book to get things moving on. Gives them some faction reputation points.
And
And
what are those?
well, it's a contract stating that if the bank is closed, if the tax collectors union does not use the bank for a year and a day, then the ownership reverts to the Builders League. And the bank has been closed for 2 years. So they found that and they were able to give that to someone at the Builders League to lose some reputation with the tax collectors union, but gain some with the Builders League.
So yeah, so what are reputation points, did you say? What were the...
Yeah, reputation points. Basically, the factions can help or hinder you depending on your reputation with them. Better is good, worse is bad. Um, it hasn't really come up with them helping or hindering. The Builders League is, I think, on the verge of being friendly. I think one or two more points, and they'll be on friendly terms. So they won't like help, but hey, we need something. Okay, well, we can give you a discount, that sort of thing. It can eventually
Is that
get
something
to.
you track, or is that something players track?
That's something I'm tracking.
Okay.
I think I do have it visible in the journal in Foundry, but
Okay.
yeah. And I think I've only got it visible for the factions that everyone has actually dealt with or knows stuff about, and the other ones are still hidden.
Right. So we don't. Yeah. I see. Yeah.
Exactly.
There are factions that exist that we haven't encountered, so we don't have any standing with in, and we don't know that they exist yet.
You do know they exist because they're the great factions, but you don't really know anything about it. They're just, you know, they're doing their thing.
Right. It's like the government. The government is
Exactly.
doing government stuff, so
Exactly.
we'll... I get it.
Um,
Okay.
so they also discover in one of the vaults a chest that has residue of that gray paste. So they know that it's from a place called Sallows, which in I think it was the last game or might have been the one before. Uh, yeah, it was the one before when you got the journal off the fetchling that Visha so easily dispatched in her bed. um,
Well, Florence was like, "Hey, I'm here."
yeah. So they found out that it's not Sallows, it's Sallow Shore. But at
Ah,
this point, all they had was the chest came from some place called Sallows, and the shipping label had been partially torn off, so all they had was that first bit.
got it, got it. You're right.
Then they get some terrible information from the manager because she was they find her books in her hidden vault, and it talks about how she's a conspiracy theorist, and anyone who can succeed on it's a DC 11 check, which is almost it's I think it's under very easy. So the easiest is DC 5, and then there's DC 11, and then it goes into actual like a regular check and harder. So anyone who can succeed on that can tell that she's just crazy. She doesn't know what she's talking about. And she's trying to like play the great factions against one another, but she doesn't know what's going on because she's not part of any of them. So it was pretty funny when Not is reading this and he's like, "Oh, that's good, that's good, that's good." And I get him to roll, and then he's like, "Holy shit, she's stupid. She doesn't know what she's talking about." I was giving him all this information like it was real, and then got him to roll.
Oh,
um,
uh,
and then they have the dinner with Ordegar Stitch Skull, and are told about the Bone Shards gang. Um, they do take some time to rest up. They meet Vija. Um, that's about when Sasha had stepped away, so we found Thomas to join us. Um, and went in, and I had a rough time with Foundry because I could not figure out how to turn off uh, one of the sounds. So it was
oh
chattering. It's
no.
chattering jaws. So they had to
Oh
turn their volume all
no.
the way down, and I'm like, I can't even turn it down. No matter what I do, I turned all the volume down, and it's still going. It's because there's an audio layer for little placeable audio bits that are like in a certain radius. And
Mhm.
I completely forgot about that because it had been so long since I had made the map. So I've got it going in my head for like half an hour before I realize, oh, if I click there, it's right there. I can delete it. I was going
And
nuts.
was it in the recording as well,
It was in
or?
the recording, yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. Whatever episode that is, I'm not listening to it. Oh dear.
But they go in, they find a bunch of
I'm just imagining like if this was if we were at a an in-person table and you had like a sound effects machine or something or like
yeah,
or even like one of those that toy with the
yeah,
teeth
yeah.
the mouth and it's like I can't make it stop.
I've taped it shut. It's
Pulled
still
the
going.
battery. I pulled the batteries out. It's like or like more like a what they call fire alarm,
Oh
fire
yeah,
smoke
yeah,
alarm. It's like beep, but more.
yeah.
Oh dear.
Um,
Oh dear.
so they come across a bunch of crawling hands. Visha gets choked pretty hard by one of them.
Kinky.
It's tough for them to get it off her because it's like on her neck. So she's fighting this thing, trying to stab it with her rapier, and it's on her neck. And but they do get through that. They go up to the bone shards and learn that these three people down here who have been accosted by these crawling hands are the last three members of their gang. Their boss's new boss came in, got their key to the bank, and then killed them and left these three just as a punishment for being a lower level gang than them. Um, raised
Okay.
raised a bunch of them as zombies, cut off their hands and raised their hands as crawling hands, and then left the remains in another area where she had boiled a bunch of people alive in there. Um,
Content warning for gruesome descriptions of.
a bit, yeah. Um, Visha has, I think it was a natural 20 on a check to persuade them into standing down, and they're now not
Remind me who they are.
the bone
Bone
shards.
Shard.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So the bone shards are now not their gang, but they're like, hey, we need some information. Can you go? And they'll be doing that
Ah.
in Great Urge only. So it's not too much help right now with you guys going around the country, but it is a resource that you guys have now.
Okay. And would Florence know about that?
Probably not about that.
Okay. So I won't mitigate.
Unless they've talked about it. Who knows if they've talked about it?
Well, because like you said, I had asked like what is my character's relationship to Berlin,
Yeah.
and you sort of said like Florence as a druid would have been like a tracker helping, sort of almost like a bounty hunter,
Yeah.
tracking people down, particularly in the outside of the town,
Outside of the
and
town, yeah.
also and then also like keeping the estate lush and green and
Yeah.
manageable, and whatnot. So Florence has been around Berlin,
Mm-hmm.
so anything that the party would have shared with Berlin presumably might have been shared with Florence. But
Might have.
yeah, that's something
Yeah.
to maybe work out
I
in
don't
some way.
think that they told Berlin about the bone shards. They might have told her that they got the information about the new boss and where the new boss is. They definitely told her where the new boss is, but I don't think they told her that they kept the three bone shards alive.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So they find out about this tavern, the Crooked Coffin Brewery and Tavern. Piss off. There we go. And they go in. They go in to do a little recon, but are not doing too well. So they they end up just fighting.
Oh,
It's pretty good where Not distracts the owner and a couple people by just being Not, so that Visha could steal the lockbox behind the bar, take it outside, and open it up and take a bunch of shit.
classic tavern shenanigans.
Yep. They kill the barkeep, who is a ghoul. They kill the chef, who's a very bad chef, because they're not actually the brewery is, or the tavern is just a front for the gang.
It's a
So
front, yeah,
they're not really caring that their stew is like a day old and cooked to the
yeah.
point where it's just mush.
Total side
Yeah.
conversation, but have you ever encountered one of those in real life, like a cafe or whatever, that's just like, you're sitting there going, how is this staying in business? They've got like moldy pastries in the front window and an empty soda fridge, and then later on you're like, there's definitely shit going on in the back rooms that we don't, and if you ever go into one and you're like, can I get a cup of coffee or can I buy a soda, and they act like they've never used a till before, they're like, just take the coke, get out.
I
I've
have not,
actually
no.
I have encountered two in my life. Back when I lived in Bristol, I lived on a really nice road, and there were all these lovely shops and a bunch of bedding shops as well. And then there's just this one very strange cafe, and I'd kind of gone into most of the eating establishments on my road because I was kind of like getting to know. I'm old fashioned and I like to actually get to know my neighbors.
Yeah.
So I'd gone and I was like, I don't really want to go in this one because I'm not sure what it is they sell. And then eventually I was like, one night I was just laying in bed and I was like, oh my God, that's the mafia. Anyway, sorry. So
That's all
it's
right.
a front. The tavern's a front. They
Tavern's a
killed
front.
the barkeep. They continued their investigations, and
Well, they locked up the tavern and went into the back, into the brewery area. Um, they, they killed a couple of the brewers because the brewers were immediately hostile because they're in the back and they're gang members. They've got the red hand, the three fingered hand mark on their clothes because they're working for the gang. They keep one of them alive to interrogate, and they eventually tie him up and put him on top of one of the giant brewing kegs. I'm not a I'm not an alcohol person. I
Do,
don't.
do I need to
The
get out the
stills, right?
chart with the all of the brewery terms?
It's a still, right?
Still
The
is for
big barrel.
spirit.
Okay.
No, no. Um,
What would they?
I mean, it different. What are they making? Beer?
Beer, yeah. Very bad beer,
Um,
but beer.
yeah. There's a word. I think it's called a ton, but
Mm.
that might be something else.
Um, well, they leave him up there tied up and move on. He's got zero. They got him. They stabilized him after they killed everyone else so that they could interrogate him. So he was just at zero the entire time. I just whatever.
Right. Okay.
They go into the first door that they can and meet a guy whose name is Pisagi the Poisoner, but they're trying to bluff and I think they said, "Oh yeah, we're looking for John. You're John, right?" And he plays along, and this is where Ramsey contracted ghoul fever because
Oh.
he was bluffing. He was bluffing Pisagi or Pisgahi, who gave him a concoction that had ghoul saliva in it, and he failed. I think he rolled like a 2 or 3 on the save, so contracted ghoul fever. He's like, "Oh no, I'm immune to that. It doesn't matter. I'll be back next week. You'll see me. I'll still be my old goblin self." And they eventually get to a point where Pesgahi attacks, or they attack him. Yeah, they attack him first and slice him bad. He's bleeding, and I forget about the bleed damage for 8 rounds, which comes up later.
Oh dear.
He runs into his lab. They chase him. By the time they get to him, he's already opened one cage that has a bunch of zombies in it, and he's running on, and they're chasing him, and they're getting the occasional attack, but now there's 3 more zombies, and one of the zombies is what is called a dirge piper, and it fires out, I think specifically from its guts. Expels air and bile in a trumpeting blast from its exposed guts. Each non-zombie creature
Wow.
each non-zombie creature takes 4d6 sonic damage and is sickened. Everybody failed, and Visha got a natural 1, so Visha was out with that just down. And everybody else is on the verge. I think Knot was literally 1 square outside of the blast, so he was fine. Pisgahi keeps running, and then I remember, or Connor says, "Hey, what about the bleed?" So I'm like, well, shit. I'm just going to roll 8 saves. Fail, 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 fail. So I got him to roll 8 rounds worth of bleed damage and killed him just before he opened the last the last cage, which had 10 more zombies in it.
Oh my god.
In this melee, Ramsey also contracts zombie rot. So he's got ghoul fever and zombie rot.
It's riddled with CTI, combat transmitted infection.
Yeah. He gets dropped as well, and then Not, after having missed every single attack for the entire combat, takes out these zombies just one after the other. Bam, 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 bam. He's completely alone. Nobody sees this.
Oh no!
And then he
guys, you'll never believe this, right? It was
he
me and 25 thugs and and
he
just me and
played
my
it
nunchuck.
like, I don't know what happened. They just fell over. I don't know what happened. So
Oh my goodness.
they finally get everyone up. They go through, and bless him, Ramsey just wanted to test this beer that Pescahi had a freaking picture of, saying there's something growing, something alive growing in these four vats. Don't go near it. And I'm saying, like, you can see bits of whatever's inside kind of oozing out the sides, like between the slats of the barrel, and the barrel's kind of like bloop, 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 bloop. And he's like, I'm gonna try it. It's acidic, and then they go up on top and drop an an alchemist fire into it,
Oh yeah.
and all four explode, and these things called sewer oozes, but we just called them booze oozes, came out
Right, okay.
and attacked.
Boozes.
So they killed these booze oozes. I don't think anyone even took much damage. That was pretty easy because they were up on a catwalk, so they didn't have to
They
worry
went from
about getting
being
hit.
wiped out to being completely safe.
Completely safe. They let out the zombies in the pen that Piscahi was about to destroy, open, um, and got them to go out the other side as well, because there were two doors. So the other door went to where the brewer that they had left alive was. So he got eaten because
Ah,
there's
ah,
there's food over here, and the zombie just
nom nom
eats
nom.
them.
No.
And they eventually get to Kepgetta's kitchen. Kepgetta was the leader of the three-fingered hand. Once again, they don't check for traps. I even did say, "Are you checking for traps?" And like, "No, I'm just putting the key in. I'll check it after." And so they turn the key, which notifies her, and open the door. She's invisible. They walk in, and once they get within, I think it's 20 feet of her cauldron, it is also a haunt. So that trap goes off. And that's where Ramsey rolls a one, and in the first round is down, and very badly down. Everyone else is frightened because of this cauldron, and they Knot manages to drag Ramsey out before he dies from another round of it doing its thing. They notice that Kepgetta is missing her ring finger, which is where the three-fingered hand name comes from, and the symbol. And Visha, as she's fighting Kepgetta, does a recall knowledge, which is something that you guys can do in combat to learn some information. And she learned that Kepgetta was a changeling, the daughter of a hag, and that at her age she should have already received the calling, which is something that calls a changeling back to their hag mother, and they get turned into a hag in a very painful process. So she should have been called back already. So Visha starts talking shit about her mom, which changes the entire battle. Kepgetta is, nope, I'm killing that bitch. And she's getting attacked by Mitch. She's getting attacked by Knot. She's just ignoring them and going straight for
Tunnel vision.
tunnel vision. Almost kills Visha. but then knocks her down and assumes she's dead at I think 3. I think Visha was at dying 3, so 1 away from dead. And then she just walks back to her kitchen, which is where she had like 3 HP. So Mitch finally, with his terrible bowmanship, kills her with his bow. And then manages to disable the haunt. And that was that. They released 2 prisoners. One of them.
So, do we know
Yeah.
why she hadn't been called back?
So she would have been fighting against the calling.
Ah,
So it's
and
something
did
they.
the missing ring finger have something to do with that?
No.
Okay.
It's just something that like you can fight against it, but it's it would be kind of like a will save every few days. She would have to make a will save to not be called back. So that would have been
And
what was
did she
happening.
have a did she have a reason for not wanting to? I mean, if it's a painful process, obviously,
It's
but
a
like
painful
she didn't want to go
process.
through it.
It wasn't mentioned, but I mean, you guys did see her brother and what happened to her
Mm,
brother at the cottage, so it could be something to do with that.
right. Okay.
Um,
Interesting.
yeah, they clear out the coffin. They get a few things, including uh, a couple large pieces of human skin, which have the rituals for create undead crawling hands and create undead zombies on them. Which is why they have a couple crawling hands at home. They decided to cut her hands off and put them in
Oh my
their
goodness.
bag, and then because they needed to bring Berlin some evidence, they put her body in their bag and went back to Berlin's and pulled her body out, but she doesn't have the hands. And they're like, here she is. So Berlin has a Capgetta zombie missing its hands, and they have a pair of crawling hands, one of which only has 3 fingers.
Just hanging about
Their manor, yeah.
their mansion, their manor.
They decided not to bring them, which okay.
Bring what? Sorry.
The crawling hands. They
Oh,
left them
oh,
at the
with them
manor.
on their adventure.
Yeah,
Oh,
they
I
left them at the
see.
manor.
Oh,
Um,
that would have been handy.
so yeah, they chat with they get a dinner with the governor, who is a fat ghoul who also smells so bad that he practically bathes in perfume.
Goodness. So,
And
a very exotic perfume. It's called Axe
Axe, yeah.
or Lynx, whichever. I think in the UK it's the same thing, but we call it Lynx.
Yeah. I think I've seen Lynx here as
Horrible smell.
well. We've got
Horrible.
Axe and Lynx,
Like
I think.
if you could just if you could bottle the smell of like desperate teenage boy,
Yep.
that's what Axe body
Oh yeah.
spray smells.
I was there. I
Horror.
was one of those
Horror.
desperate teenage boys.
Actually, I think I might like early on in my transition. I think I was very much overcompensating, for
Mm.
my masculinity, and I think I went through an axe phase
Oh yeah.
myself. But then a gentleman discovers. I don't remember. Anyway, nobody cares about my grooming habits. but
Um, but
so
yeah.
yes, so that we've got this portly, smelly gentleman governor,
Um,
and
and they managed to get off without getting in trouble for breaking into a closed bank, basically. And that's where they bring out the contract and a tax collectors league person gets very angry with them and storms out, and yeah,
Um,
they level up to level 4, and then we had, I think, one game of downtime, which is where Ramsey eventually failed all of the checks for his ghoul fever. He still believes that he's immune, so they did have a scroll for removing disease, and he knew that he had the zombie rot, so he was like, "Okay, use the scroll, get rid of my zombie rot, and I'm fine. I'm fine." And he's getting worse and worse. He's taking all this damage. He dies. They bury him. He wakes up in the next morning and climbs out of the grave, and he's like, "Why did they bury me?" Still thinks he's alive.
I feel so much better.
Yeah, exactly. He's somehow grown like half a foot. His tongue's super long, but no,
Oh my
I'm
goodness.
fine.
I do not recall those details being described earlier,
I
so
think I did mention it. I said, "Hey, describe yourselves," and I mentioned, by the way, you are taller and you do have a super long tongue because you've
right.
got ghoul fever. Even though you don't believe that you've got it, you became a ghoul. But yeah, that is pretty much where we pick up with you joining us.
Excellent. Well, I tell you what, that sounds like a really good moment to take a quick comfort break.
Absolutely.
Um, so I'm gonna go make a cup of tea and be back in about 5 minutes, maybe.
Sounds good.
All right.
Okay.